Helpful for life.
Beans, they're good for the heart. The more you eat, the more you... Oh, hey there. So whether or not you get the gas factor from eating legumes, they're a great source of fiber in addition to protein. So you should consider giving them a cook. Now for me, unfortunately, my wife doesn't like the texture of beans, so we don't have them as much as I'd like, but you should really consider adding them to your diet. In case you aren't familiar with the term legume, it's basically a fancy way of saying a plant that grows with pods. Think beans and peas. You may also hear the term pulse, which refers to the dry, edible seed that comes from within those pods. For legumes, there are thousands of varieties, but I'll just name a handful of them for you. For beans, first up is black beans. Now, we have a little family recipe that's super simple, but delicious to make as a dip with tortilla chips, or to have kind of like a side dish. And that is a can of black beans, which you rinse, and then a can of corn, which you drain, and then some of your favorite salsa. You just pour all that together, add some salt and pepper, mix it up. It's so good and it's so simple, and you can have all of those ingredients on hand all the time, which we do. The next bean on the list is black-eyed peas, which is actually a bean. Another tasty recipe for this one is something called Texas caviar. You should look it up. Then there are garbanzo beans, which are also known as chickpeas. Again, the peas, beans, I don't know why they made this so confusing. Then there are kidney beans, which are also known as red beans. Then there are pinto beans, cannellini beans, edamame, which is another name for young soybeans, lima beans, navy beans, and that's just naming a few of them. So as you may know, the different beans are used in a wide variety of different cultures. For example, black beans are a staple in a lot of Latin food. When I was in Costa Rica for 2 weeks, every day we had black beans with lunch, dinner, and breakfast. Then there are garbanzo beans, which are also known as chickpeas. Those are really popular in Mediterranean food. Of course, they're the main ingredient that make up hummus, but they're also really good in falafel, and you can actually just toast up chickpeas by themselves with some spices to have a nice little snack. You may have had edamame as an appetizer to some Asian cuisines. And another Asian cuisine, Chinese food, often uses a red bean paste in a lot of their desserts. It's actually pretty good. When it comes to peas, I'm definitely no expert, but from what I could find, there seems to be 3 main types: English, field, and sugar. Now, the English peas are also known as garden peas, and there's actually 2 types of sugar peas: snow peas and snap peas, which are also known as sugar snap peas. So even though I said there's only 3, there's a bunch of names for the same different things. Yes, the same different things. It makes about as much sense as their naming convention did. Next, there are lentils. We've got brown, red, green, and French, just to name a few. And the French is also known as puy or puy. I'm not sure exactly how it's pronounced, but P-U-Y in case you see it. And also another term you may see is dal or dal, D-A-L. It's a term used in India and surrounding areas to describe dried, split pulses. So now if you see it on the menu, you know. Lastly, there are peanuts. Yes, they are technically a legume. We're not going to say too much about them other than the fact that they're great to add a little bit of crunch to your salad or your Asian stir fry. One last knowledge tidbit for you when it comes to legumes is going to be comparing dried and canned beans. The first factor, which may be an important one for some of you, is cost. Now, dried beans you're going to be able to get for a little cheaper because you can buy them in bigger quantities and they don't require as much processing. However, we're talking a matter of cents here, so I don't think it's that big of a factor. The next factor is taste. You can't replicate the taste that you get from simmering dried beans from scratch for hours and hours and hours. It's just going to taste that much better every time. However, if your beans aren't the star of the dish, it may not be that important and it may not be worth all that extra time and effort. What you can do instead is simply take a can of beans, dump it in a pot, add some spices, stir it up, maybe let it simmer for a while, get those flavors come together, and you'll have a pretty similar product. So if beans are the star of your dish, maybe take the extra time and do the dried ones, but in general, our advice is to just use the canned ones. Not only are they easier and less work, but they're a great staple to have on hand, and they can be combined with a couple of other things to make a quick and easy meal they're a perfect staple to have in your pantry. Well, congratulations. You made it to the tail end of legumes. Sorry, I couldn't help myself. But enough about legumes. Let's see what other type of non-animal proteins are out there.